Hey, Highpoint. I hope you're having a great day. I just wanted to give you a bit of encouragement. I know that we've heard the story about Goliath, David and Goliath, when we were kids, and we've talked about you talked about the stones and the sling and all that kind of stuff. So we know and we recognize that David slew Goliath, even when others didn't have the faith, but sometimes our Goliaths come in all shapes and sizes, right? There are unhappy relationships. There are problems at work. There are problems with other coworkers, a boss that's particularly difficult, a pile of debt, an uncontrollable habit, a rebellious child. There are all kinds of things that become our Goliath. And like David, we have the power to overcome those things. We have to believe that God will help us overcome those things with His power. So we can gain a victory over a seemingly magnificent and a huge problem with God's power. So one of the things I want to point out to you is that in 1 Samuel 17:46. David actually claims victory over Goliath before he even walks out there. Before the battle begins, David claims victory, which is crazy, right? Like he walks out to this giant as a child with armor that doesn't fit. He has to take it off. Oh, that's not going to work. And he walks out with his stones and his sling, and he claims victory before it even starts. There's three things that he did that I want to encourage you to do as well. One, David remembered times in the past that God had been there for him. David had helped defend the sheep, his father's sheep, as a shepherd from lions and bears. And so we know that he remembered those times that overwhelming odds were against him, yet God was with him, and he wisely remembered how faithful God had been. So that's one thing. Remember times in your past that God has been faithful. Number two, he had a strong conviction about God. He knew exactly what God could do. He had full access to the storehouses of God's faithfulness, His loyalty, and His strength. And so there was no doubt in his mind that he was going to be able to take out this giant. No problem. And thirdly, he had practical habits that bolstered his faith. He had spent time in the wilderness alone with a bunch of bleating sheep that he was able to hear God's voice, have time to reflect and think and love who God was and hear what God wanted him to do. So I want you to take time to listen to God, to discern what God is telling you to do as well. So one, I want you to remember times in the past that God has been faithful. Two, I want you to have strong convictions about what God can do. And lastly, I want you to have practical habits that'll bolster your faith. If you have these things, you can overcome any Goliath that is in your life. You can be confident that no matter what, God is sufficient, no matter the size of the problem you're facing.